Welcome to my channel Livestock Products Technology. Today we are going to discuss in continuation to fish preservation. In the last lecture we have discussed about the preservation by drying. Today we will discuss about the preservation of fish by salting, or it is also called as curing. So we will understand what is salting and what is the difference with curing. Curing is more of modern terminology where it includes the some other preservatives and ingredients. So we will understand different methods of curing like dry salting and wet salting and how to do it step by step, and we will understand the advantage or benefits of salting or disadvantage, and also the factors affecting the preservation by salting. So in a common sense, salting means adding of salt. It's a traditional age-old methods of applying salt for preservation. So salt as such takes away the moisture, reduce the water activity and prevents the microbial growth, and thereby it preserves. So salt is the preservative agent used to lengthen the shelf life of fish and fishery products. This is used in almost all other methods of preservation. Along with that, salt is added except in icing, refrigeration and freezing. So curing is a method of preservation which involves addition of other ingredients such as sugar, some phosphates and some other preservatives. So salt and sugar dehydrates the tissue and therefore inactivates the spoilage of fish, which I have already mentioned. By drawing the moisture out, it increases the osmotic pressure and it is a hindrance for the microbial growth, and it also increases the water activity and thereby the microbes cannot grow. So let us understand little more details about the curing. Curing is a modern terminology of application of salt for preservation along with other ingredients. So it's a broader term that encompasses various methods of food preservation including salting, drying and smoking. It involves reducing water activity through the addition of chemicals like salt, sugar, phosphates or sometimes some acids. Here the salt is a primary curing agent and it inhibits overall bacterial growth and reduces the water activity, also reduces the osmotic pressure, increases the osmotic pressure. So altogether it's a antimicrobial role from the salt, and that's why it's a simple easy preservative. But when it is done in a scientific way along with other ingredients, then we call it in modern science as curing. Now we will talk about salting and drying. So earlier lecture I have discussed details about the drying. There sometimes salt is not added, but generally it's a common practice. First salting followed by drying is done. So drying is often used in conjunction with salting to further reduce moisture content and extend shelf life. Methods include sun drying, where fish is exposed to the sun and air. So this is after salting, then it is exposed to the sun for drying. Sometimes we can use controlled or artificial dehydration, and that can also be used, allowing for consistent drying regardless of weather. If sun is not available after curing, we can dry them in the oven. Now we will talk about salting of fish. So this salting process is affected by weather, size of the fish and the species of the fish. For salting, good quality fish should be chosen and proper cleaning should be maintained. There are different kinds of salt, some being better than others for fish curing. However, in some distant islands or other distant places, there may not be much choice. So whatever salt is available, that has to be used. So for the salting, there are two methods. That is, one is wet salting and dry salting, which we are going to discuss briefly, and later we are going to discuss the details how it is to be processed. Now let us understand little more details about fish curing. Fish curing is defined as the method of preserving fish by means of salting or pickling, and then sometime drying and also smoking. Altogether sometime we can call it fish curing also. So brining or pickling, that is done by wet salting, where fish is immersed in a salt solution which is called as brine, and which also draws out the moisture and inhibits bacterial growth. Fish to be cured are usually first cleaned, scaled, that's the scales are removed, and eviscerated, that is all the guts are removed by opening the belly portion. Sometime in case of medium sized fishes, it will be split through the backbone and at the top of the head, with the two halves joined by the belly skin. So belly part of the skin will be joining, but upper part, the backbone part is cut open, so it looks like a butterfly for the purpose of curing. Now we will see the benefits of salting and curing. The first is preservation. Salt and drying inhibit bacterial growth and enzyme activity, and thereby it prevents spoilage. So that's how it is a preservation. Shelf life extension. Salting and drying can significantly extend the shelf life of fish by reducing the water activity or moisture content and by stopping the microbial growth. There is flavor enhancement. Salting can also enhance the flavor and texture of fish because of the salt for long-term action. It gives a special kind of flavor, but it should not be in a very high concentration. And lastly, the cost effective. That is, it's a cost effective method of preservation. Salting and drying are relatively inexpensive method of fish preservation. Without much expenditure, we can preserve the fish. Very easy method. Now we will discuss about dry salting. So here fish is covered in salt, that is the salt crystals, which will be drawing out the moisture, and thereby the concentration of salt will increase in the fish tissue. It will increase the water activity. It is a valuable method when there is no modern preservation is available. So when there is no other option like freezing or other methods are available, salting is a best option for preserving or extending the shelf life of fish. This method is used to preserve the fish in open fishing boats while at sea, and the fish in this case are kept whole. So when they go for fishing in a distant sea or other places, when there is no other option, in the open boat itself they will just apply the salt on the fish, or either they have to apply ice or the salt. Some people like the salty taste of fish prepared in this way, but it is always possible to wash away the salt by soaking it in fresh water before use. Here little more details about dry salting. In this method, the fish is salted, but the juices, slime and brine are allowed to flow away. By dry salting can be done in an old canoe, on mats, leaves or boxes. Different kind of large size leaves we can keep, or on the mat we can keep for doing the dry salting. In any case, the brine formed by the fish juices and the salt must be allowed to flow away. For 2 parts of fish, 1 part of salt is added, that is 2:1 ratio. So 2 kg of salt, 2 kg of fish, 1 kg of salt is to be applied. Layers of fish must be separated by layers of salt. That means a layer of fish, then a layer of salt should be applied, then again another layer of fish can be kept. Now we will discuss about the detailed steps in dry salting of fish. The first step is preparing the fish. So there is first beheading, that is removing the head and there will be bleeding, followed by gutting, that is removing the all visceral part by opening the abdominal cavity, and then cleaning of fish should be done as soon as possible. Larger fish can be cut into suitable pieces. Like earlier I have mentioned, we can open it from the top and the abdominal part will be connected. That helps in better application of salt. The second step is salting. Here the bottom of waterproof vat is covered with a thin layer of salt. So whatever crate or container we use, at the first bottom there should be a layer of salt. Over that a layer of fish should be kept where the flesh part, the open part should be upwards. Now over this fish again a layer of salt should be applied and then a next layer of fish can be kept. So like that we can have 2 or 3 layer of fishes with alternate fish and salt. Next we will continue further about this salting step. Here in continuation of the second step in dry salting, the second step is actual salting. Here the fish is reversed with the skin side up, covering them with salt layer. So we have told 3 layers of fish. Now it is reversed with skin side up and again layer of salt applied, and the top layer is always should be the salt layer. As due to the salt, the moisture will come out and a brine will be formed. So this brine should be kept saturated by adding more salt. Because of moisture loss, the fish level is fallen down and accordingly more fish may be placed along with the salt layer. The fish may be cured for 12 to 15 days in warm weather and 21 days or more in cold weather. Finally, the properly salted fish flesh will be translucent, it will be firm, but yields no light pressure. So if we press, there will not be yielding. So we are discussing about the steps of dry salting. The third step is washing to remove the extra salt. After dry salting, fish, that is in the second step, fish are washed in unpolluted seawater or fresh brine and put on plain surface, applying pressure on them to remove moisture and make them thinner. Then the last step is drying. The salted fish may be dried in sun or by artificial heat like hot air oven, and it should have even humidity controller or fan for fast dehydration. Here we can see the flow chart of dry salting as I have explained the steps. First there is heading and gutting and washing the fish. Then soak in 10% brine for 30 minutes and drain the water. Then dry salt fish in shallow boxes. So here the stacking of fish, by first layer the skin will be downwards, whereas in the last layer the skin will be up. So it should be left for curing sometime 12 hours and it can be up to 30 days depending on the purpose and many other aspects. After this, wash the salt crystals away with 10% brine or seawater. Then the fish should be kept for drying during daytime and pile up overnight, and when the drying is optimum we can pack and keep for further storage or marketing. Now we will understand about wet salting. This is a cheaper since it requires lesser amount of salt. The principle is to keep the fish for a long time in brine. Brine is a concentrated solution of salt in water. So here we need watertight container, which can be like a tin container or drum or cano or barrel, or nowadays different plastic barrels are also suitable. To make the brine, we need to take 4:1 water and salt, that is 20% salt solution, that is the brine, which will have a very high osmolarity. If the salt is coarse, it has to be ground or pounded first, and it is then dissolved into the water by stirring with a piece of wood, and that makes the brine. And to be good, the brine must float a fish. That is, if the concentration is optimum, the fish will be floating, because the specific gravity of such a high concentration salt solution will be high, so the fish will be floating. Now we will discuss about the wet salting procedure, or the steps how it should be done. The steps depends on what kind of fish to be salted. The first thing is to cut off the head, remove the gut and clean the fish. Though in case of small fish, it can be salted as a whole. In case of large fish, it must be cut open, as I have told in case of dry salting, and it is preferable to take out the backbone. Fishes with heavy amount of scales must be scaled. That is, the scales should be removed in case of very thick scales in such fishes. In places where the flesh is thick, slashes must be made so that the salted brine can penetrate the flesh. In case of very thick flesh muscle, we must make slash so that the absorption of salt will be better. In case of very large fish, it should be cut in thin fillets. Very big fishes, we have to make the fillets for drying, which we can see in the photograph. So this is in continuation about the wet salting procedure. After the fish has been prepared according to its size, it must be cleaned and put in the brine. That is the brine solution already prepared. In that, fish has to be immersed. A plank, that is the wooden plank or plastic container or plastic board or a mat should be placed over the top with a weight like rocks, so that the fish is entirely covered in the brine solution. Now this salted fish can be kept for a long time in a dark or in a shaded place. The remaining brine, once the batch of curing is over, after keeping for few days, the curing is over, then those fish should be removed. The remaining brine can be used 3 times, but water and salt must be added every time, because the salt goes away, so we have to add more salt, and it can be checked by putting the fish when it is floating, then the salting concentration is optimum. But in any case, the fresh brine is always best. Now we will see the factors affecting the salting and curing. The first thing is salt concentration. The amount of salt used affects the rate of water extraction and the final salt content of the fish. So the concentration is very important, either as a powder or as a solution. Then the drying time. The duration of drying affects the final moisture content of the fish, and final moisture content is very important for shelf life or preservation. The fish type is another important factor. Different fish species may require different kind of salting and drying methods depending on their moisture content and other composition and etc. And finally, the freshness. The freshness of the fish affects the salting process and the final product quality. So if the fish is already old or undergone some changes, then it will not have the perfect quality of salt absorption or drying or better shelf life. Here we can see the picture of salted fish as a whole. As I have mentioned earlier, when the fishermen go to far places in deep sea or in the faraway island or any other remote place, the salting can be done in the boat itself in different containers. Here we can see the final product, the salted and dried fish. These are actually the slice of large big size fish. So first they will be cut into slice, then they will be salted and dried. So now we are at the end of today's lecture. I will summarize about whatever we have discussed. First we have discussed what is salting and what is curing, what is the difference. Then we have discussed different methods of salting, and then we have discussed in details about the procedure for dry salting and steps and procedure for wet salting and steps. We have also discussed the benefits of salting and how it works as a preservative, and we have discussed different factors affecting the salting or storage life, etc. So altogether this is a brief lecture on preservation of fish in continuation of my previous lecture on drying. So salting or curing is a very common, simple, easy method, and whenever there is modern method like freezing or other methods are not available, this is a very suitable option. Thank you.